Next, we have Dr. Sherilyn Morrow talking to us about the PUNCH outreach program.
Oh, thank you, Nikki. I need those 30 seconds. I'm really pleased to be here to update you on the mission-embedded PUNCH outreach program. We are pioneering some new pathways for how outreach program can be embedded in a mission successfully. There's more to it than I can give you in this brief talk, and please consult the PUNCH website and look under the outreach tab, and you'll find some resources that will fill in any gaps that I make. Here's my outline. I want to lead with our partners and collaborators, consultants, advisors. An extraordinary team of people are devoted to PUNCH outreach. I want to introduce our ancient and modern sun watching theme. You see the symbol for that on the right, consisting of an ancient sun watching petroglyph in Chaco Canyon and Druckmüller and colleagues image on the lower right. So that is a kind of symbolic representation of our theme. I want to update you on some photography collection that we've done in Chaco Culture National Historical Park, summarize our outreach products and events that are intended. We're just getting started this summer as part of phase B and C to implement and develop these, and roles for scientists in PUNCH outreach, how you can be involved. And we encourage everyone to consider that. I want to open with this wonderful picture that was sent to me by our Hopi cross-cultural consultant, Philip Tuluetstwa. He is raising his PUNCH mug, as you can see, and he has been with us as an episodic advisor since the very beginning and relentlessly supportive. He sees NASA heliophysics as a natural extension of humanity's long-lived devotion and dedication to sun watching. We're all descended from sun watching cultures and all humans. So it actually has a very universal theme while we focus on the Puebloan and Navajo people of the American Southwest. So thank you to Philip. Here are the organizations that, the core organizations, the POC Outreach Core Consortium, we pronounce that POC, that SWIRI is collaborating with in the Four Corners region of the US Southwest. You see Colorado, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and organizations represented. You see Chaco Culture National Historical Park, where that petroglyph is here in the remote northwestern part of New Mexico. We have an evaluator here based in Tucson, Dr. Sandlin Buxner. This very busy chart, don't worry, you don't need to pay into any attention to anything that's not circled. Those organizations I just showed you are here on the org chart, and I want to do a shout out for those whose names are in bold. These people have been attending weekly telecons for over a year without funding, planning for this moment of phase CD funding to move forward. And so there's a lot of dedication to this effort, and I just want to shout that out. There is also these organizations in green here. The advisory board will meet for the first time on 16th August, and they will meet virtually. A very, very cross-cultural group of people that we expect to learn a lot from as we attempt to learn from and benefit the variety of populations that we're interested to do. Let's see over here on the right, the PUNCH Outreach and Communications Alliance. This is a non-funded kind of partnership, except for the exception in bold there with Parker Solar Pro. We do have a funded partnership, but the others are more dissemination partners and more working on an advisory basis, a mutual awareness basis. And this will help us push out from the region to a more national audience. Circled in red at the top left is the communications team that come along with any funded NASA mission. We've been having a great time connecting and collaborating with these folks and the NASA HEAT, the Heliospheric Education Activation Team, which are more focused on formal education. Part of what we're doing with mission outreach is to coordinate closely with those folks and complement and extend their efforts. And I can't say enough about those circled in purple. Craig, our PI, attends most of our weekly meetings. It's pretty amazing. He comes and gives us an update and a shot in the arm. And Sarah Gibson also very supportive. This mission has perhaps the most fertile ground for a thriving outreach team of any I have seen in 20 years in the business. So I want to also shout out specifically that it's really working. This science outreach communication team is collaborating and giving feedback to each other. We did that on the website, which is stunningly beautiful in my opinion. It's one of my favorite websites, and I'm biased, of course. We have an outreach press release coming out of SWRI probably tomorrow. We have a NASA blog post that we're working on with NASA Communications. And we had on July 20th, our first national outreach talk given by Dr. Weil. Nikki gave us a home run talk to the Night Sky Network, NASA's network of amateur astronomy clubs devoted to outreach. So, and she graciously received feedback from her science colleagues, from the outreach team, and from NASA Communications. These other principles that you see here will be elaborated in an invited talk that I'll give with Craig at the AGU. We were grateful to be invited to do this as we elaborate on these principles that we have used for the development of our plan and the implementation of it. These may be of possible values to others who are considering proposing a plan for an embedded program of outreach, and we welcome all that kind of participation broadly. So our Ancient and Modern Sun Watching theme has 3 elements: NASA heliophysics missions, but not only PUNCH, but Parker Solar Probe, Solar Orbiter. We think these missions shine when we tell a story that involves them both. PUNCH with the big picture from the outer corona to the inner heliosphere, and Parker Solar Probe and Solar Orbiter flying in the corona. As I mentioned, we have a funded partnership with Parker. They have become interested in our Ancient and Modern Sun Watching theme, and we are very excited about what will come out of that. We are focusing our ancient sun watching dimension on the sun watching features of Chaco Culture National Historical Park. This is a World Heritage Site. And as I mentioned, all cultures are descended from sun watching people. So there is a universal appeal to this, even though we focus our efforts on the sun watching in Chaco. And there are a variety of techniques, horizon calendars, light and shadow on rock art, that are used in ancient and modern sun watching, and that's of course similar and in parallel with our missions, which use a variety of techniques. Modern doesn't only mean the spacecraft, though. Our modern is also modern people doing personal sun watching, and the images you see there at the bottom are people in Chaco who are attending programs for sunrise and sunset that are related to equinox and solstice times of year, which are culturally significant. And this will be more elaborated at a AAS talk that we will do in January of 2022, so hope to see some of you there. This dimension of being present for actual first-person sun watching is much appreciated by our cultural consultants. There as a representative is Ms. Verna Tolsalt, a Navajo cultural and language consultant and member of our very cross-cultural advisory board. And we see this context of a NASA mission interwoven with cultural traditions as beneficial. So that's true for all of our consultants. You see at the bottom right, Ms. Pamela Harmon, who is the chair. She will serve in the first year as the chair of our advisory board. She led a NASA project to develop Girl Scout badges in space science. We're going to develop a Girl Scout patch on the ancient and modern sun watching theme. And you see a mock-up of an early design possibility there on the lower right, which is a simplification of our ancient and modern sun watching symbol that was mocked up by Don Kolinsky of NCAR, with whom we worked on the website as well. So onward, there is a larger image of the eclipse petroglyph. Typically, when we tell this story of what was the first CME anybody really witnessed in the corona or active solar corona, we point to that image in the middle, an 1860 hand drawing of a total solar eclipse. We want to mess with that narrative a bit and acknowledge that one possible interpretation of this 10 centimeter wide petroglyph in Chaco Canyon is of an active solar corona during the 1097 eclipse that the people of Chaco could not have missed. The monumental architecture that's there was at its peak, and independent analyses show that 1098 is a good estimate of solar maximum. So it's entirely possible during those few minutes of totality that there was some kind of solar activity, coronal activity that was registered in an impression in rock art, which of course would have taken a long time to create. So we want to work with our Native American partners and the NASA Heliophysics Comms Group to amend this Western narrative on the history of eclipse observations in a cross-culturally appropriate manner. And we'll be ready then for the 2024 total solar eclipse, also at a time of high solar activity. And so we have this opportunity to commune across space and time and culture this decade, which is pretty neat. Here's the larger context for that eclipse petroglyph. Let's see, I want all to say we're trying to get NASA heliophysics content in the National Park interpretive program for this site. It's near the visitor center, and lots of school groups visit that ramp. They can't go to the other areas, however, which are just as interesting, as I'll show in a moment. Here's a close-up of that panel. This panel was newsworthy in 2017 in association with the total solar eclipse visible from US. And it will be newsworthy again in a year of eclipses and high solar activity and heliophysics mission milestones. And I want to mention that this eclipse will be one of the 3D printable files that we'll develop for blind and low vision learners, but it will also be of value for people interpreting this site, because of course you can't touch that rock art, but you can touch a tactile representation, which gives you the texture. And our partner at the New Mexico School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Jeff Killebrew, award-winning science teacher for the blind and visually impaired, is really thrilled to be testing these types of tactiles. It won't only be for the ancient part of the sun watching theme, but also the NASA part. Craig's seminal paper, 2016, change of visual texture as the radial striations of the corona, outer corona, become more flocculated, turbulent flow as we move to the solar wind and farther away from the sun. So that's part of the motivation for moving in this direction. There are lots of reasons besides that petroglyph to interpret this as a sun watching site. It does require a special permit to go off that ramp that was on a previous image. There is again the southeastern facet where that eclipse is. On the northeastern facet around the corner is 4 times wider, this spiral figure pecked into the rock. From the center of that spiral, you can see interesting sunrises on the horizon. This triangle-shaped rock in the upper right shows you that about half a month before the summer solstice, the sun rises in that notch and rolls up the side of that rock to the top. It's very visually dramatic, and we're excited about capturing that. The southwestern facet is, there's an alcove in here that you can go inside, and there are interesting grinding features and other kinds of rock features that indicate that it may well be a sun watching place, and that there's a significant horizon interaction near the time of winter solstice on the other facet of this rock. So it begins to look like, whoa, the interpretation of this as a sun watching site may be very good, and it's certainly worth putting in our historical narrative. I would like to mention that when we were out there doing photography, we heard this chattering, and there were 2 nestlings, ravens, right above. We affectionately call them now the 29SJ514 ravens. I witnessed their journey through fledgling, although one of them didn't make it in the heat wave of June. The family here became supervisors of our photography. Speaking of which, what do I mean by respectful photography in Chaco Canyon? During June and July, we deployed our first photographic expeditions, and this is written up in a small feature article on the website. I encourage you to have a look at that. In conversation with our native partners, they've emphasized to us that these sites are as alive today as they were to the ancestors, that if we're working in such places, we need to respect them and have a pure heart when we enter them. We need to honor the ancestors. And for these reasons, our photography team learned to engage in a moment of reflection and appreciation each day before starting work at the site. Our friend and ranger, GB Cornucopia, helped us to facilitate that occasion, and our partners were attentive to this entrance with respect and mindfulness that it is a privilege to walk here and make photographs. It's not a right for us to go in and do this. This is perhaps a highlight. The July expedition collected 9,650 high-resolution photos over a 3-day period to support the development of a 3D model and this site and the surrounding area. These data will allow the creation of flyover animations, VR explorations, and digital interactive lessons. We know that even in these media, we have to exercise the type of respect that our Native partners are telling us about. And so the creation of these will be done in this same manner in collaboration with our Native partners. Each of those dots in this point cloud is a photograph, if you can imagine. So here is Mr. Joe Aragon, one of our very key cross-cultural partners. He cuts across many cultures, is an Acoma Pueblo retired STEM educator and cross-cultural consultant for us. He really appreciates that this project can make connections to the ancestral, the ancestors of Acoma and Laguna Pueblo students who built Chaco, and to help them realize that science and engineering is for them too. Look what they did with building the monumental architecture of Chaco and these very clever technologies for observing the sun and telling time and tracking the movement of the sun through its cycles. The project can, this is a quote from him, the project can provide a way for our Acoma and Laguna students to experience NASA science and envision a future career in science without losing touch with their culture. That's very important to us, that we don't create polarization and dichotomy, that we really interweave these topics together. And also we are asking the help of our partners to our cross-cultural partners to say, well, what would you like to say to the broader world about your culture, if anything? There is no forcing that conversation. It is simply an invitation to become a part of our planetarium films and other products that allow Acoma and Laguna to become visible to the rest of the world, should they choose to be so. Summary of our outreach products and events. I'm not going through this whole diagram. Please simply look at the top, phase 1, 2, and 3, data collection, product development with evaluation, and dissemination. So these are our 3 different phases. We're definitely here in phase 1, collecting Chaco photography and also curating relevant existing activities. We are building on the work of the past and not replicating it. We just had in Salt Lake City a meeting, summit of veteran practitioners of kinesthetic astronomy. It was a marvelous meeting of people who have worked for decades in applying kinesthetic astronomy to various contexts. And these kinds of embodied activities are really important to all of our outreach products and envisioned events. Here are some of our envisioned events. Live interaction planetarium shows on the leading edge of how to engage audiences and not just make it a TV show in a dome. Embodied activities can be included before or even paused in the middle or afterward. We went for planetarium partners because of PUNCH's visual nature, and we really wanted to capture that. Also, Chaco, of course, we want to immerse people in the heliosphere and the solar wind. We want to immerse people in Chaco in the dome. On the right there, solar observing, tactiles and events for the visually impaired, very multi-sensory. Other than visual, how do you allow blind and visually impaired learners to observe? And I mentioned that change in visual texture. And there are other ideas we're seeking from other missions and from the PUNCH scientists. What other things should we be rendering in a tactile medium that have good meaning? And love to start our science team thinking about that. They mentioned the Chaco interpretive materials and getting heliophysics embedded in that, and the Girl Scouts and out of school time patches and events. Those events will be patch earning, and then community STEAM events, emphasis on broadening the participation of Native and Latinx youth and families. These events will have lots of things in common, in addition to embodied activities, access to you all, PUNCH scientists and other heliophysicists. Arts integration is very important to us when we're crossing cultures. Direct and indirect solar observing modalities. Some Navajo cannot look directly at the sun, but they can look indirectly and they can learn about sun watching in Chaco. Multisensory, audio, visual, tactile, kinesthetic. We also, with a mission outreach, and this is a really important point, we are threading the needle between what NASA communication does with regard to news and up-to-date information on mission milestones and discoveries. We're going to use those in our events, and we are going to provide pathways and leads to more enduring options for STEM engagement with NASA, including citizen science programs, internships, and other sorts of things. So these choices, of domains for our outreach effort have been carefully chosen and aligned with what NASA science and people and data are about. The Girl Scouts came from recognizing that 25% of our science team are women, and that's a very high percentage, perhaps the highest of any NASA mission currently going. This is a beautiful quote from Dr. Nunn, who is the director and chief curator of the National Hispanic Cultural Center and Art Museum. And she really said very well what we want to say, that our products and events will be inclusive and relevant to historically underserved and marginalized populations. But in so doing, we will enhance the value of our efforts for all people in all communities, multi-sensory, multimodal, multicultural. We can have a more universal feel because we're being inclusive, more inclusive with our participants and collaborators. Finally, our roles for scientists in a PUNCH outreach. We have a very enthusiastic PUNCH team, science team. We polled them before the first science team meeting in early June of last year. 85% say they love to communicate their science. I won't dwell here, but just to say, they also indicated in this poll a high degree of interest and experience in the domains of outreach that we're used to. So we will be reaching out to you based on the results of that survey to see about your engagement as these events and product development begin to take shape. Here's 15 out of 30 PUNCH scientists surveyed indicated that they were interested to learn more about using their personal artistic endeavors in an outreach context. And this is one that I'm especially excited about. Dr. Heather Elliott, who gave a scene setting talk earlier for Working Group 1A, uses her veils and the shapes and movements of the veils to represent features in the solar corona and solar wind. And we're very excited about the possibility of engaging her in Girl Scout patch events and these cross-cultural community STEAM events that integrate the art forms. And so we have divided ourselves into pods to accomplish our work. The PUNCH outreach domains will assist with the clustering, collaborators from multiple institutions, consultants, and advisors. And you see pods 2 and 3 are expert in working to broker with the scientists' engagement and working with our cross-cultural partners. And so we are finding this a really exciting way. Some of you who are older might recognize the allusion to open the pod bay doors, please, HAO in 2001, A Space Odyssey. Here are some specific ideas that we're in need of really quite soon. Provider of ideas and access to scientific data for our budding planetarium films and tactile objects. Craig, just this last week, was a featured interviewee, number 5 there, for scientists as hobbyists and artists. We want to bring you, you're at the leading edge of science, and we want to know about your formation as a scientist, and we want to know about your other areas of endeavor to make you a human being. And so if anyone else is interested in being interviewed for that podcast series being conducted by Fisk Planetarium, I highly encourage you to reach out. There's a lot of ways of being involved besides outreach talks. Outreach talks are really important, as we saw from Dr. Vile's highly acclaimed and well-received talk to the Night Sky Network. There are going to be other opportunities like that and opportunities at our outreach events. but there are other ways to be involved if that's not your cup of tea. We are also looking for perhaps a group of scientists as heliophysics presenters or consultants for the outreach team at our annual team meeting, which now looks like it will be virtual in early fall. So all interested scientists from all NASA heliophysics missions are welcome. And please, I encourage you to contact me with your interest. So in summary, PUNCH outreach will positively affect, this is our intention, hundreds of thousands of people in the 5-year period of our funding, and vastly more people as our sustainably designed products and event planning guides are used for many years afterwards. We are using the eclipse as a hook, but it doesn't go away. The ancient and modern sun watching theme will endure. We will leave a legacy of interconnection and new institutional capacities. Where some of our institutions are strong, we will strengthen others, and vice versa. And so there's a lot of good complementary effort, and we will leave a legacy of partnership and interconnection and new capacities that are of ongoing benefit to NASA public engagement, even after the PUNCH mission is complete. So we really are intending to leave that legacy among our partners. We will engage you, any interested heliophysicist and any interested mission in high impact, enjoyable, this is important to us, no forcing here, enjoyable outreach opportunities that allow support for diverse learners. Please contact me with your interest. Thank you.